We all are. Anyway, I digress. Well, have we survived enough rain? Thought we were going to have to build an ark for a while there. And Michael and I can only go so many days without sunshine, so to keep that light going, sometimes we like to play music trivia at breakfast, and we have our Alexa device support us in playing songs that might cheer us up. For instance, when it rains that much, we have two ways to go with it. We can either ask Alexa to play all the songs we give her about rain, or this week it got so bad I asked her to play things like "You Are the Sunshine of My Life" and what are some more? I forget what we all had her play. But finally, when I realized it wouldn't stop raining, I said to Michael, I said, I like to stump him because he's pretty hard to stump. He knows a lot about music. But I said, remember that Johnny Cash song, 5 Feet High and Rising? How many remember that? Am I the only one in the room that remembers that? Oh my God, this isn't going to work here. Well, you know, Michael's with you. Michael's not a big country fan. He doesn't hate it, he just isn't a big fan of country because, you see, I'm a little bit country and he's a little bit rock and roll. And only people my age will get that joke, okay? But we each have to be true to ourselves. We have to be authentic, and we can't change because that's just who we each are. Now, I haven't been, this is a great segue, you'll get where I'm going with this, to a new book, my new Anne-Marie's Book Club. If Oprah can do it, why can't I, right? So the book is Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani, and I know a lot of you knew her name already when they gave the announcements. And she had a near-death experience that was so similar to mine, it was almost spooky. And the only difference between our near-death experience, big difference, of course there's a lot of little details that were different, but the biggest difference is when she went to the other side, she remembers it all and came back with it. I was so high on morphine, I don't remember anything about what happened to me. I just know that my feeling nature, when I hear things like what she writes, I know it's true. I can feel it in my being. And so this book study is not about listening to our stories, you've all heard them enough, but about discussing the insights that she received while on the other side, and to make our own lives better. So you can read it at home and gather together and we'll discuss all her insights. But we're going to start today. I thought I'd give you a little tease if what I said isn't enough. She started out with why she, and I will add I, had cancer. She had it as an adult. I started at a very young age. And her answer was fear. Cancer is all about fear. And my answer is always, cancer is what's eating you? What's eating you that you're not dealing with? Hers was a fear of disapproval and not being liked for who she was. Interesting, because when I was 10 and first got cancer, I was a poor country girl that went to a citified city school where all the girls had crinolines and fancy shoes, and I had my hand-me-downs on. So you can imagine how that went over. So her first realization is self-love, most important thing, self-love, and being true to yourself. Like Michael liking rock and roll, and I liking country, and we both getting along. I always say we are each an infinite idea in the mind of God. Why would we try to be anything else? Just because other people might feel more comfortable. Is it public pressure or peer pressure? Do you ever say fine when you're not? Especially you Unity people, I know you do that because they want to be positive, right? How are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, right, I can tell by the look on your face. Do you ever say yes when you mean no? Come on, you're sweet people. I know you say yes sometimes when you mean no. Do you go along with the crowd rather than standing out? Are you living authentically and true to yourself? You know, in almost every culture around the world, the philosophies are know thyself, and then to thine own self be true. So there's a disclaimer with this. I had a church member once that really took to that and decided she could be as obnoxious as she wanted to be because that's who she was, bless her heart. I didn't have that bless her heart down quite yet at that point, so I told her something a little differently. But being your true self is always being in harmony with others. It doesn't mean you like everybody or, like what's going on, but your true self can do the act, at least, in harmony with others. Now, know thyself, to thine own self be true. Right away, the first example I thought of was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Tried out for his first church and was turned down because his style of speaking wasn't dynamic enough. Boy, do they regret that now. And I know what they're talking about because we all develop our style as we go along. But that brought me, I'm a Gemini, so you have to follow the dots when I talk. I went to a leadership summit a few years back. It was in a big church, and it was televised on the screen in front of the church. And it was all these leaders of all these companies over around the world telling you how to be successful. But because it was a church-sponsored event, they had all these ministers in between. And I was always doing fine until the ministers came out, and I couldn't handle it because so many of them felt like in order to be good, you have to yell real loud and be very intense. That's how you tell people. And I tell you what, it just didn't feel authentic to me. And I left feeling very drained and weary. Now, my favorite speaker was the former head of Boeing and later Ford. I'm sure he's not the head anymore. This was years ago. But he had a very gentle teaching style. And it just seemed more authentic to me. He just got up in his own voice, told it like it was. It wasn't about whether you're intense or loud or quiet or soft. It's about, are you being authentic? I wasn't going to tell this story, but way back in high school, this guy by the name of Larry Watson, who's no longer with us on the planet, he and I were always seated together because we both had the name W. He was Watson. I grew up being named Weinman. That was my birth name. Anyway, I gave a talk one time. I think it was in an English class. And I was usually a pretty good speaker because I wasn't afraid. But I did all the right things. They tell you how to do the gestures and they tell you how to speak a certain way. And I sat down thinking I'd done such a good job. And Larry turned around and looked at me and he said, "That was terrible." And I looked shocked. He said, "You weren't yourself. Just be yourself." And I made a vow from then on, I would never not be myself. You can like me, you can not like me. I will not be anything but myself. And I love reading stories of other people living their authentic lives. Oprah does her interviews. She interviewed Elizabeth Gilbert one time, and the article was in her magazine. She was the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, and Love. You all know Elizabeth Gilbert. If you're a woman, you know her. If you're a man, you might want to keep up a little bit. But this was after Chernobyl, when that big, nuclear thing happened in Chernobyl in Russia. And it was very toxic, so they moved everybody out and put them into government housing. Now, I want you to think for a moment, because we can never bring it on home. What if in Cookville something like that happened, and they told everybody here, you got to leave Cookville and go live in this government housing so many miles away? It was crushing to their souls. And a handful of people, it was funny, she said mostly women between 70 and 80, but a handful of them became defiant and snuck back into their homes when no one was looking. And they thrived there for years. They outlived most of the people that went to government housing where it was safe. Now, why did that happen? And no, I'm not telling you to go live where there's toxic energy. But here's what the author said, Elizabeth Gilbert. She said, it, meaning Chernobyl, is some of the most dangerous land on earth. But to a lady like Hannah, who's already been through so many trials, famine, World War II, an atomic meltdown, and aging itself, what does safe mean anymore? So Hannah drinks the contaminated water, plants vegetable gardens in the poisoned soil, makes her own moonshine, laughs about life. We'll get to that in her book. Laughs about life, what's the second most important thing. And then goes outside to butcher another radioactive pig to make a radioactive sausage. She's joined by her friends who live and laugh, I repeat, live and laugh, and butcher their own eradicated pigs. Now, I'm not telling you to go live in radioactive homes, but they have to go back and live their true, authentic lives where they were happy. That was their home. They could see no other way. Well, if you're still following my dots, let's go back to that leadership summit I went to. I felt a little pressure, all those, especially the loud ministers, but I felt so much pressure because they were all saying, you can be it all, you can do it all, you can be it all. Any of you women have heard that? We're women nowadays. Men do it too, but women have been programmed now to think you can do it all. Thank God I raised my kids before I went into ministry, because I don't think I could have divided my energy like that. But anyway, there was a pressure, and I thought of the old song from the 70s. It was from an old play of Studs Terkel. If I could have been what I could have been, I would have been something. Yeah, right. Well, you could get a spiritual hernia trying to do that, right? Let's compare Beethoven and Mozart. Both wonderful. Beethoven was great. He did everything perfect, perfect, perfect. They say he would rewrite something 12 times to get it just perfect. Where Mozart was a nonconformist. He was very free outside the box and true to himself. He broke every rule in the book. But when you feel his music, even though they're both great, you feel that freedom, that lightness, that healing quality of being true to yourself, which is what freedom really is. And Jesus was also a nonconformist. When the Pharisees were sitting around wanting him to follow the letter of the law, he said, oh, it's the spirit of the law. There's a little more freedom in that. And he never would have done the old bracelet, what would Jesus do? That one, that irks me. God made, we are each a divine idea in the mind of God. I'm not here to be Jesus. I could never be Jesus. I'm here to be Anne Marie, love it or leave it. Amen. Amen. And I mean that for you too, not me. Okay. Another woman, I didn't pick all women. No, I guess I didn't. There's some men's stories in here too. I try to be equal in that. Her name was Anne Linnea. She was the first woman to kayak around Lake Superior. Now, I grew up in Minnesota. Lakes, all the lakes, 50,000 lakes in Minnesota, that is true. But Lake Superior is huge. It's dangerous. It's cold and it's deep and storms come up at moment notice. Her friends and family blasted her. What are you thinking? Kayaking around such a dangerous lake. But she was called to do that. And she said to Greg Levoy, wrote a book and wrote her story in his book. He said there weren't many people who said, oh, that's a really great idea. Let's all go kayaking with you, you know. In fact, there were none. It was very tough on being on the receiving end, she said, of not only my own doubts, but everyone else's. It's really hard to stand in your own truth when everyone is telling you, why don't you just keep things the way they are? Anybody relate to that? Anybody ever tell you, why don't you just keep the peace? Keep quiet, behave, act like we want you to act, or do it like we've always done it. Yeah. Do I hear a reverse amen? What's a reverse amen? Moi? I don't know how to say that. How about oops? Oops. Yeah, that's my reverse amen when you hear it. Okay. Bringing this up to my own personal hero when I was first starting my spiritual quest. Some of you don't remember maybe. Norman Vincent Peale. Oh, good, I got some sound out of that. Good. The Power of Positive Thinking. Who hasn't read that book, huh? His peers, his supervisors accused him of being the work of the devil. And he was called on the carpet and told to either stop this writing or he would have to leave ministry. I have the movie at home. It's a DVD, an old DVD, black and white, One Man's Way it's called. But it tells his story so beautifully. He didn't know what to do. He almost decided to quit ministry because he didn't think he could stop writing these truths that he believed in. So he, as it come to that, he prayed. And he prayed and he prayed. And pretty soon the phone rang, and it was a sign. There was a young girl that was dying. And he was called to her bedside to pray with her. And he prayed all night at her bedside. And in the morning, when they both opened their eyes, she was alive, she was awake, she was okay, she lived. And so he stayed in ministry and wrote even more books on the same topic and helped and inspired millions of people, still does if you can get his books. Even my own mother, he helped me get into ministry, and here's how. Remember last week I talked about my folks living in North Dakota, and it wasn't always a fun time for them. Well, my mother was a bit depressed, but every week she would hear Vincent Peale on the radio telling her to hang in there, it was going to be okay, trust God, so on and so on. And so when I came along, she always said she had 3 really good daughters that behaved, and then she had me, and she kind of shook her head. I grew up being told by parents, especially who were programmed, that if you left the Catholic Church, you would burn in hell forever. And I had to tell my mother I was leaving the Catholic Church and joining, not only joining Unity, but becoming a minister. And so the way I did it was to say, it's okay, Mom. It's just like Vincent Peale. It's a church of real positive teaching. And when I said Vincent Peale, she said, oh, okay, maybe that'll be all right. And now my dad, thank God, wasn't alive anymore. He would have had a hard time. He would have been very afraid for me. But my mother accepted and even came to my ordination, which I was so excited about. But anyway, I'm going on and on this morning. My last hero, Henry David Thoreau. And you all know this one. If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him keep step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. You know, sometimes we don't understand our lives. I mean, anybody here have a life that makes sense? I mean, you know, some days my life just doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense. We just have to love ourselves, be true to ourselves, and have fun and laugh. Have fun and laugh. Let's take that into prayer. Let's just all take a breath. Breathe it out. Breathe all those oopses out in your life. And allow that divine self, that divine idea of who you are to come forth. Accepting it and loving it first yourself. And then allowing the courage to come forth to live that life. Joyously. With laughter and with fun and with freedom. You are an infinite idea in the mind of God. Your way is made easy and filled with grace. And we do pray this for each one of us and all around the planet in the nature of the Christ presence. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you. Great.